Welcome, everyone, to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. This podcast is about inspiring you to get outdoors, showing you how to lighten your pack and build your confidence so that you can start living your life full of adventure. I am Joe, and I am joined here by
Tayson
and Brigham.
That's right. And today we're going to be talking about their recent trip up Mount Delano, or near Mount Delano, I guess.
The area between.
Yeah, up in the Tusher Mountains, which is a nearby high elevation mountain range, and lessons learned and all that. If you want to see the video that we made, that'll be on the Outdoor Vitals YouTube channel. You can go check that out. But we're gonna go more in depth, I guess, in this podcast here. So first, tell me, what was the initial goal for the trip?
Yeah, I think it was back in December after I did a trip. I kind of got into my mind that I wanted to do another trip like it. Started looking at some options, and Delano kind of got singled out as the best option because we were just looking for something that was more on the intense side for winter. Delano is an interesting peak. It is one of the tallest mountain ranges, I guess you could say. It's the third tallest mountain range in Utah. It's definitely the tallest range in the near proximity to us. And what's funny is I've been on the mountain a lot, but I've never actually hiked Delano Peak. I've been on like the peaks that don't have trails on them all around there. We fast packed by it multiple times. I've hiked in there. I've camped on that mountain growing up with my family a lot. Never hiked it, and part of that is just because the trail you can do it like from where you can drive your car to get up there. It's just not a massive day long type event, and so usually I'm looking for bigger trips or bigger activities. And so the idea came to me like, well, what if we did it in the winter? Like that would be something way different. And so I researched it, and I found one guy that had done it. So I knew it was doable, essentially, that had written about it, and just thought, man, that would be a really epic thing. It would push us. We'd get to test some of our gear that we were wanting to test at a different level. But yeah, I mean, sometimes just planning these trips, it's fun to plan things that are more on the extreme side or push your limits or comfort levels, because you always get the best R&D out of it. You also learn the most out of those experiences. And so kind of pitched it to Brigham, and he took the bait, and we put it in the calendar. So
I remember it just being that summiting the peak in snowshoes would be kind of, and it'd probably be cold, would kind of be the difficult part of it. But I do remember a couple days before the actual hike that the weather forecast had changed quite a bit. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I mean, and it's been a minute, so I'm pretty sure it was 6.5 miles to the peak from the car. Does that sound right? Or was it six to the turn and then another 1.5 miles up? 7.5?
Yeah, it was like 4. Didn't we think it was like around 5 to where we would camp, and then another 2.5 to the top?
Yeah, so let's just call it roughly 7 miles all the way to the peak. But there's a lot of elevation climbing. I want to say about 3,500 feet or something like that.
Yeah. The thing about doing like winter backpacking in like the Rocky Mountain West area is, in the summertime, what is an area that has lots of Forest Service roads and pretty well maintained dirt roads can take you like all over the place. So this hike in the summertime is like nothing to bat an eye at. It's very, very mild because you can drive so high, and so it's just not like not like that much of an undertaking to do. But when it comes winter, all those roads are now totally inaccessible, and so it almost like expands a roadless area to really the only road you're driving on is the paved highway, and then once you're off there, you're really what you would call backcountry. You're in it quickly because there's no roads. And so the route that we had was going to basically start at the paved highway wherever we could park, and we would just walk up what would normally be a road, but it would be buried in snow. And so that actually creates a significant challenge for snow travel, because you're now starting at like 8,500 feet elevation, and the top of the mountain's like over 12,000 feet. So that's where it became a lot more significant of an undertaking, more challenging versus this easy 1 to 2 hour day hike in the summer. And then, so as that planning began, that's where watching the weather really came in, and we were watching the weather for weeks. And anything past like a 10 or 12 day forecast is pretty worthless. But it was interesting that when we got to about 10 days away, there was like amazing weather everywhere except the day that we wanted to hike in, and it just never changed. It just always showed snow, and sure enough, it snowed right before.
Snow and then really cold temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in an area where if the wind blows from the north, it just can swing the temperature drastically, and if it blows from the south, it's quite warm. And I was just talking to a guy who ran the St. George Ironman, and he's like, I got heat stroke. It was like 90-degree temperatures. I got heat stroke during the Ironman. Went back to my hotel, slept that night, got up the next morning, and it was snowing. And that's what can happen around here. And so that is like essentially what happened. Is it just came in, this cold front, this storm hit. But back to kind of what Brigham said, I think that is one of the coolest parts about winter backpacking is you can, a road that typically wouldn't be backcountry is instantly backcountry as soon as there's snow on the ground and it's winter conditions. And so, it completely changes everything. And it's cool because when you get out there, it's like, yeah, I've been here in the summer, but you come here in the winter and it's just a totally different experience.
And we didn't see a single person other than where we parked.
Yeah.
Like, just meaning cars driving by.
On the oil, yeah.
It's the only people we saw.
Because no one else wants to climb that thing in the middle of winter. In the middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah, it would have helped if we had the ability to shift that just even a few days. Maybe we would have caught like a snowmobile or tracks or something like that we could have followed. Yeah. Because as it stood, it got brutal fast. So
tell us about that. Tell us what happened from going out to the truck to camp.
Well, we should talk about like the plan, what we thought would happen.
Okay,
the mode of travel and transportation. So, like, there's, we've done as a company some like cross country or Nordic ski trips. That's very flat, up to mild, up and down terrain. Like, that's all the equipment that we have access to and experience with. Like, that's what we've done. I've been snowshoeing for decades, which is like a very inefficient way of traveling on snow versus cross country skis. But when it comes to incline and having to climb, I don't have what's called like an alpine touring setup, which is basically nice floaty downhill skis that have a special binding that you can free your heel, so your heel can lift off the skis, and you put what's called skins on the bottom. Those provide grip so you can walk up a mountain with skis on and not slide backwards. Like, we don't have that. I don't have that. I've never done it. So we're just trying to find a way to do this route, and that meant for us most likely snowshoes, because the cross-country skis have a tiny bit of grip, but at the grade that we're going up this route, like, they wouldn't have worked. So knowing that and like doing some map, checking out the route and the topography, it's a pretty gradual approach that would be totally doable on snowshoes. And snowmobilers do take that trail, but there's just not a lot of snowmobilers around here. And so the thinking was that on snowshoes, on top of a snowmobile track, going is actually quite easy. You're not gliding along like you would be on skis, but in terms of effort and time, you could probably almost maintain close to a normal hiking pace. So that's what we were trying to do. That's what we planned on, is snowshoes, probably having some snowmobile tracks to go on. If anything else, it hadn't snowed for weeks.
Be hard,
and that means that the snow is settled. It's not fresh powder, and so the amount of sinking that inevitably happens on snowshoes is very minimal. But as the weather made up its mind, that changed things for us.
Yeah. So we were planning to go all the way in and go hike Delano, and it would have been would have been brutal, but at the same time, it was totally doable. So, I mean, we had our kits packed, we had our snow setups, which, at least me and Brigham have done it quite a bit. There's a few guys in the office done it quite a bit. We've got it pretty dialed where we've got really light setups that are still super adequate for going below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we got there and basically took off on the trail. And like I say, on the way up, we're kind of driving up the canyon and it's actively snowing. And we're like, holy cow. And it's supposed to snow a little bit and then like stop in the afternoon. And so we're like, maybe we'll get some sunshine in the afternoon. That'll help a little bit. But yeah, it was like a lot of question marks going through. I think the first thing Brigham said as we left the office is, I just want to make sure that your head's in the right place. There's a good chance this is going to be impossible. like there has been 18 inches of recorded snow and it's still snowing.
Yeah, so in Utah, there's skiutah.com has a snow report. So every ski resort every morning at like 5 a.m. lists their overnight snowfall, their 24-hour, and their 48-hour fall. And so, yeah, where we were going had received like 21 inches of new snow in 24 hours. And what that means here is that's snow that you're going to sink straight through. Snowshoes are not something that's going to prevent that. So 21 inches of new snow in 24 hours means that's 21 inches of powder that you're sinking in. So...
yeah, so we knew going into it, pulling up in the truck, it's still snowing, that it was going to be pretty gnarly. And kind of were getting our gear on, chased a mouse off my truck that instantly showed up.
That was the weirdest thing.
So I like get out of the truck, I walk around the back, look at it, walk back to the front of the truck, turn around, and there's a mouse standing on like this snowbank looking right at me. And I'm like, don't go to my truck. And he starts walking towards my truck. I'm like, no. So had to chase that guy off. But yeah, we start up the trail, and at first it was like, oh, this is hard, but it's not bad, and we're cruising along, and I'm like, take a little video of like the snow, it acted like sand. Like here in Utah, it's just so dry and fine and stuff that it's like you're walking in sand almost more than anything else. I would say that like if there's 10 inches of snow in that condition, you fall through 75-80% of it. Like that's only the last 20% really packs underneath you. And so I'm taking videos of Brigham walking and his feet, and the snow's just like falling around him just like sand. And it wasn't too bad. We're like, okay, this is what it is. But we keep trucking up this trail, and I keep like checking my watch, and I'm like, man, we haven't gone that far, and you keep watching the time, and you're like, I think we're going slower than like 1 mile an hour. And keep going. And so we basically trudge along for about 2 hours, and I say we ought to stop and eat a little bit and just because it's not like we're lollygagging. Like one of us is cutting trail, so one of us is kind of packing down while the other one's going behind him, and that helped quite a lot. But we would take turns and switch every 10 minutes to help break the trail. But yeah, we get in 2 hours and have a little bit of food, and we're just kind of reassessing. It's like, man, this is taking forever, and we could see that the fatigue was building. We weren't exhausted or anything at that point, but like you could tell it was building. And so then we kind of keep going, knowing that like, I don't know where we're going to get to. Hopefully we could get up to an area we call Big John's Flat, which was still about a mile or a mile and a half from where we were hoping to be. And which doesn't sound like a lot, right? Like, I mean, a lot of us that are like trail runners and stuff, you'll crank that out in like 15 minutes, or something. So, but in this conditions, and it happens so subtly that we're going along and it's just getting harder and harder. And soon enough, I'm like, all right, let's switch every 5 minutes. I can't keep breaking trail for 10 minutes straight. So now we're switching every 5 minutes, and we're going, and I just start realizing like, hey, that snow, was like halfway up my calf, and then it was like towards my knee, and now every step is going above my knee. And at the same time, I'm realizing just how fatigued I am, and especially in like your hip flexor, so that muscle that's like trying to pull your leg up, right? Because it's like you're doing the worst stair climbers ever. Like you've got weight on your feet from snow and snowshoes, and you're trying to pick it clear up high, set it back down, pick up the next foot, and so it became exhausting to try to move your feet, and those hip flexors were just fried. Like they just couldn't. So then I had to start like catapulting my leg forward with my calf, like trying to like explode my calf to get a little bit of momentum, then swing my whole body to like get my leg to go forward. And one of these times when Brigham was breaking trail, we got like done with the 5 minutes, and I look backwards and I say, do you think we even covered 200 yards in that last 5 minutes of exertion, you know? And
that was about as far as we could go in 5 minutes.
That was kind of the cap, yeah. And so we were kind of doubting whether we'd even done the right thing to get to try to push to Big John's. But yeah, eventually we did. And I think it was nearly or right at about 5 hours of just trudging up this road, right? What would take you literally an hour in summer conditions at the most. And it took us 5 hours of like sweating, working, pushing, little to no smiling. No, I think me and Brigham like can lock it in, but like, man, I don't know that anyone else would have been very happy to be there that day. I mean, it was
it's just work. I mean,
there's work.
no other way to describe it is that was just physical labor. I mean, functionally, like mechanical, how it works, what it looks like is, you know, you're sinking above the knee, and you're wearing a snowshoe that's 20 inches long or something like that. And so as you're taking every step, you're not lifting your snowshoe out and above the snow and planting it down. I mean, you would burn out in 10 minutes if you tried to do that. And like just physically, I don't even know if it's possible. So really you're lifting your foot and snowshoe as high as you really can, and then pushing it forward through snow. So you're not like coming down on top of the snow every step free of all weight. No, you're basically dragging your snowshoes up a little bit as much as you can, and then pushing it through a wall of snow every step. So it's kind of like if you were to be walking like what's that guy on Ebenezer Scrooge's Bob Marley or Morley?
The chains?
The guy the ghost with the chains around his ankles and the heavy ball. Like that's probably a lot what it's like, is because you just can't lift your feet that high and you can't move them forward freely. So it was just 5 hours of physical work.
And you guys didn't make it to the camp, right?
We didn't. Well, we didn't make it to our planned camp.
Camp.
No, we made it about a mile from there. We stopped at Big John's Flat, and basically by that point in time, typically when we're on snow trips, it's a timing thing. Meaning, if you don't get to camp by a certain time, you start to, I don't know, I'll call it the danger zone, but like it's definitely the no fun zone for sure. Which is, if you don't get your camp set up before, there's always like a late night wind that picks up, it seems like. And then also like the temperatures just start dropping at a certain time. And so if you don't have your shelter up, you know, if you don't have your sleep system maybe set up, or with us, we're using hot tents, you know, you don't have your stove built, all those things become exponentially harder. It becomes exponentially less fun and more miserable. And so basically by the time we got there, time was up. Like we'd pushed as far as we could possibly go before it was like we need to start working on getting shelters set up. And so that's what we did. We got there and just started packing in areas where we could set our shelters up, which honestly, I was pushing pretty hard to get there, because at least once we got there, we had more big and expansive views. It opens up a little bit into like a meadow, and you can see the peak.
You're not just in the forest.
Yeah.
Well, and when we were hiking up, it was cloudy and socked in with clouds and snow the whole time. So we really, I mean, you couldn't even hardly call it like a scenic hike, because you just couldn't see. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So it was just physical labor with not much of a view of anything other than a wall of trees.
It's a great time.
But it was where we stopped. Yeah, the clouds broke.
And right as we stopped,
really
it was supposed to break. The clouds were supposed to break at like 3 o'clock, and by the time we got there, it was like 5 or something. This is in February, and so the clouds finally broke, and it was like really pretty. Kind of had that moment of like, oh, this is nice, this is good. So that was a really enjoyable part of it. But yeah, I instantly just start getting to work. So we started packing in areas where we could pitch our tents. We're using these floorless shelters that we could do hot tents in. So we each had basically a one-person tent that have stoves in them. And that was tough. I still would have liked to have been setting up even 30 minutes earlier.
Oh, yeah.
or more, because it takes time. It really does, to set these types of shelters up. Because, I mean, you pack in your snow for 20 minutes, let's say, so that you've got a good solid base to set up. Then you set up a tent. This was my first time setting up this tent in the field. I'd set it up in my backyard. So, I'm kind of taking a little bit of extra time figuring out how to tension it. The snow is so deep that you're going and finding 4-foot branches, shoving them all the way down in the snow, and then tying your guy lines to those for anchor points. At least that's what I ended up doing, because stakes were useless. Snow stakes would have been all right, but that's just extra weight to carry. So you're doing, there's more to it, than typically just throwing up your tent and climbing in. And so you get the shelter set up, and then for me it was like, all right, I'd like to get the stove set up. And by that point in time, you're already cooling off. You're not working as hard physically, so your body core temperature is going down. I stopped, put on layers and stuff to try to keep warmth in, but you're also trying to like let as much of the moisture you've built up get off of you before you start layering up. But yeah, by the time I built in my stove, it was still icy cold. The overnight low was projected to be like -13 to -15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, we probably know, I don't remember what it is now, but
I can look it up.
It's like 22 below, negative in Celsius or something like that, I want to say. But yeah, so really cold temperatures, and it was dropping fast. Yeah. And so that was kind of a sucky part. I hate building that stove when your hands are frozen and you need dexterity. Like you're trying to put a washer nut onto like this all thread, you're basically just building something with the delicate parts of your fingers, and it's so cold that you don't want them out of a glove. And
yeah, keep in mind you're trying to assemble something made of a material that is like has extremely high conductivity. So titanium. So one of the rules of cold weather anything is avoid touching any metallic anything with your bare skin, because metallic, anything metal, especially alloys like aluminum, titanium, copper, they conduct metal extremely fast.
They conduct cold.
So they conduct
temperature.
Did I say metal? Temperature. So now you're trying to, it's very cold. You don't want to take your gloves off to touch this metal that's just going to suck the heat right out of your fingers.
And it does.
But you have to have the dexterity to do it, so that's always fun.
That's always the part to me that's like the worst part. That's when you're like, why couldn't we have been here just a few minutes earlier and the sun was still shining or something,
But that's where, Tayson and I, we talk about it all the time, like every time this happens, but just getting inside that shelter it's like a night and day improvement of just where you can feel like basically there's no air movement. So it makes it manageable to take your gloves off to screw on some wing nuts, even though it's still freezing cold. But like, that's where
high elevation, the air is always circulating. Yeah. And people don't realize that. I think that's why they get dehydrated. They always get dehydrated at high elevation because they don't realize like the air is always, even if it doesn't feel like it's windy. You know what I mean? At those high elevations, and so they might be sweating, but it's evaporating off so fast because the air is always circulating. It's the same thing there. Like, you climb in that shelter and you didn't even think it was windy, but by just encompassing it so that you're out of any type of breeze or movement, it
feels like 10 degrees warmer. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So it actually, I think we tracked it, it got down to -15, and that's -26.11 Celsius.
26. Okay.
Yeah.
It was cold. It was my coldest, night that I'm aware of, we actually were watching temperatures out there for sure. But the good news is, after the stove was built, got back out of the shelter, for me at least, started gathering firewood, and at this point it was getting dark enough that I had to get a headlamp out. But moving around and getting the wood and stuff kind of heated my body temperature back up. Yeah. And I was so really I only had, I would say 30 minutes ish of being really cold, and then from then on I was moving, working, and yeah, it went pretty well.
Was there still a hope to get up the mountain?
I had zero.
No, okay.
At that point,
so it was just go up there, camp, go back.
Yeah.
At that point.
And the sucky thing is if it had been 15% easier, 20% easier, and we could have got to that base camp, looking at the face the next morning, which we'd already decided at that point, this isn't happening.
Right.
But looking at the face the next morning, the wind blows so much up there that it blows a lot of the snow off of the peak. So it probably wasn't that deep if you could have even gotten to the peak efficiently. But I mean, we talked about this. Like that was just the worst possible timing. Like there was no tracks on there. The snow hadn't packed in at all. So we just had everything working against us to move through that type of terrain. But it was so we'd kind of given up hope on that. It was more so, all right, let's survive the night and figure out what to do in the morning.
Z-Man had a comment here.
Yeah.
From on the video itself that we made. Cross country skis would have been much better than switch to snowshoes when needed. I'd have used goggles with light colored lenses. You guys should have used 4-season tents. For the love of God, what were you thinking?
Listen to the podcast. So cross-country skis, we already covered that. They wouldn't really have worked.
They wouldn't have worked for the last mile and a half, 2 miles to the peak.
Yeah. Well, he's saying bring both.
Well, right.
Bring both.
You use snowshoes when needed.
Yeah, that's
an option. I guess.
Z-Man might not know we're an ultralight company.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, we don't know his context, but yeah, I mean, choices. Everybody makes choices. We chose to take snowshoes and not carry an extra few pounds of weight in our pack.
There's a chance, like Brigham has Nordic skis. I don't. There's a good chance I might look more seriously at like those Black Diamond ones for next year for different events. But yeah, for this one, it was like we knew that the terrain was steep enough and aggressive enough that we'd be in that snowshoes was definitely what we chose. As far as what was the other thing you said? 4-season tent?
Yeah, 4-season tent.
I feel like our tents are great.
I think your tent option was probably the best one. But.
Yeah,
I will say this. I would... Well, I probably shouldn't say this because you shouldn't be using like a gas stove inside of a tent, right? That's like a no-no. But so you didn't hear this from me. But in a lighter, faster trip where I know I'm like going to be setting up and moving tents a lot and stuff like that, like it takes a significant amount of time, I guess, to put up those wood burning stoves and shelters. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can get a little bit faster at it, but sometimes I'm like, man, depending on a scenario, it might not be worth building.
How big is this stove thing? How big is it?
Brigham's is a little bit smaller than mine.
If you were to take my laptop and
make it a
2 more
box
size to it,
okay,
that's about how big it is.
You never want to have that thing pre-packed and just like hanging on the side of your bag.
No, they make them really amazing because they'll pack down to something like almost as thin as this notebook, bigger print. But I mean, it's crazy. Like when people, I think, saw the one video that I did and saw that I was using a 45-liter backpack and had that in there, like I think it's just really mind-blowing. They can compress that small. It can be that light.
It's a takedown titanium wood-burning stove that weighs 2 pounds, maybe.
Yeah, they're impressive. So, and of the 2 pounds, like a good chunk of it is just the big chunks of all thread that they have, which is like all thread is just a big long rod with threading all the way up and down it, and that's got to be like 30 to 40% of the total weight. It's like, man, if they could just make those in titanium, this thing would shave off another half a pound. Yeah. So they're really impressive. But yeah, I don't know. 4-season tent. I've honestly don't know that I've even ever owned one. I don't see a massive advantage for my use case scenario.
One. I mean, there's it's choices. It's just there's pros and cons to a 4-season tent. I'm not.
Compared to your setup,
we did not take 4-season tents because we feel like we chose a superior option. We chose an option that we know works for us, that we've used in the past, and that we have confidence in. And neither of us have a 4-season tent. So,
no?
Out of curiosity, Brigham, would you ever have interest in a 4-season tent for any style of trip, or would you rather have like a wood burning stove setup? If that makes any sense.
I would have interest in them. I think they have a place. I mean, again, it's choices. So a 4-season tent, you'd be able to just set up, and then you've accepted that you're not taking a heat source. So now you're not taking the time freezing your fingers to try and set up a wood burning stove, and
set up faster,
and you save up a ton of the work that we had to do afterward of acquiring all the wood and then breaking it down, which was couple hours of work. So yeah, I totally, there's an application in especially a trip like this that a sliver of the population will ever do for a 4-season tent, because you just set up your tent on top of the snow, you're done.
Coldest night you've ever slept in, Tayson? I don't know about you, Brigham.
When I was in Scouts, I lived in an area in Utah that has the second coldest recorded temperatures in the lower 48 states. So
Where's that at?
it's called Peter Sinks.
Okay, I don't know where that is.
So that's where I grew up in, like, as a young adolescent Boy Scout, like going and doing our winter camps there. And so, like, I've had camps below 20 degrees for sure. But keeping in mind, when we would do this, we would like take a snowmobile in and pull everything like in a sled. So, we had giant sleeping bags that weighed like 15, 20 pounds.
Yeah.
That were, just crazy warm. But
yeah. And how did you guys sleep?
I actually slept pretty good.
Yeah, I really did. I was.
For all that exhaustion.
I did a layering system. I had my pad that I layered on a foam pad, but then for my bag, I had a 15-degree sleeping bag and a 30-degree top quilt inside of it, and I was toasty. I was quite warm the whole night and slept really good. I think I got up the next day and was like, my watch, right, I have the Garmin Instinct watch, and I think it said I got like 10 hours or some ridiculous amount of sleep, like 10 hours, and I was like, it was awesome.
Did you
good night's
did you lose any temperature by burning a hole through your bag?
I patched it very quickly, so no. I just lost
You want to tell the
hairs
audience
out of
at
my
home
head.
what happened?
Yeah, that was dumb. So no, I don't want to know. Basically, the very last thing I was doing at night, I like made some hot chocolate, and then I cleaned my mug out, and I set it on my stove for just a second to just like heat it up and then to get the water out of it. So I heated it up, pulled it off, and I just had it in my hand. And I went to grab something, and I like leaned forward, and I just touched my bag with it, and it just instantly, I smelt it before I even realized it, just melted a hole in my bag just with touching it. Because those, like Brigham said, titanium, it can get so hot so fast. Like it just, if you put it on heat, it gets to that heat really, really quick. If you take it off the heat, it cools down really quickly. But so putting it on that stove for even just the 10 seconds that I did to warm it up to get that water out just got it so hot, and I just got distracted. It was a little later in the night, and I was ready. I was exhausted from the hiking, and I just had a mental lapse and touched my bag, and boom, it just melted through. So then I had almost a 2-inch type hole in my bag. So pulled out the Tenacious Tape Repair Kit, slapped the patch on, and said a few choice words in my mind at myself and went to bed. It just makes me mad because it's like that bag. They're nice, high quality bags that people would be very happy to have. You know what I mean? And then I just carelessly put a hole in it like that. So it just eats me up. And
we just put out a video about don't do this to your expensive sleeping bag.
That's true.
On our YouTube channel. And that Tenacious
I shouldn't have been the guy hosting that video.
We retail that repair kit, don't we?
Yeah. They're like $9 or something.
Okay.
Members, I'm sure.
So
get
worth
like a
it.
rebate. So they might be like $7 after. They're not much, but they're worth having. I used them 2 trips in a row.
2 trips in a row, exactly.
Yeah.
So you screwed up something 2 trips in a row.
And I've been using a different sleeping pad. And by the nature of the design of the sleeping pad, it's not our sleeping pad. Mm-hmm. It's that yellow one I've been using. Where the valve is, for whatever reason, the fabric on the corner of the valve has just worked on the fabric, and I need to patch that now, and I'll use Tenacious Tape for that too. So it's something that it's a staple in my pack.
So if you want a good discount on that, you can go check out the links below. Check out the membership, join the membership, and you'll have access to our discounted retail items. Including that.
That is a trail-proven essential. It's in now we call them essentials. Proven essentials. I've used it.
The harsher the conditions, the more important that piece of kit is. Yeah. Honestly, it's like the easier the weather. Like the middle of summer, I mean, worst case scenario, you have a bunch of down flying around, and you probably just throw your jacket on and be fine. But in this, you don't want to lose any down when you're in these conditions. So
even in the summer, like if you didn't patch it,
what a mess, dude.
The amount of mess, and you'd lose the down, and you can't get it back, right? So by being able to patch it right away in that moment, I lost like 2 little plumes of down. You know what I mean? It's nothing in the grand scheme of things, which is nice. But yeah, I think it's on the agenda to talk about a few other proven essentials that may end up getting on there, such as like a sew kit, and even a first aid kit on the podcast. So you may hear some of us talk a little bit more about some of those, what we deem as essential. And I've never had to use a sew kit, but something like that could really save a trip.
Mm-hmm. How was the trip out?
Amazing.
Well, that morning was so beautiful. I mean, it was just like a bluebird day, not a cloud in the sky, and then we really got to see that basin that we were in, and had just a panorama from basically like west almost all the way to the east, so we could see the whole approach to Delano Peak that we would have taken, but plus all the other surrounding mountains, and it was beautiful and much easier.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
The snow hardened because it froze last night?
No, we just had 2 people's worth of tracks.
So we walked our same tracks out, so it's already packed in. And
that makes sense.
But I mean, at camp, it was way pretty. I got up and was just looking at Delano Peak, and even though where we were at, it was just gorgeous. When you get up to those high elevations, and it's just intense. I could see tons of snow blowing off the peak.
Yeah.
It was still... It's gnarly to go up to those elevations, which I think is why I get so fascinated with it. Is it's you never know. You never know when you're going to be able to actually like execute on a trip, or when you're not. And we've got a pretty good record of bumping into weather at high elevation lately. So we'll see if 2022 continues that bad pattern, but hopefully not. Because and that's what's just so cool about to me. What's fascinating about it is you get up to those high elevations, and anything can happen, and everything will happen, and that's what makes it interesting. Anytime that every variable, and there's just nothing, it gets a little more bland. Not that I don't want to try to plan for every scenario and stuff, but like that's what makes it fun, is if you know the outcome before you start. I think it takes a little bit out of that experience. So,
would you change anything about what you brought or anything like that?
There's a few things I didn't use, but I don't think that I would change them. So I always bring like down puffy pants when I do trips like this, and I didn't end up using those at all. And I'll typically bring like a hard shell pant as well, and usually I'll bring like a rain jacket and rain pants. And I actually didn't end up using either of those either. I might not have brought the rain jacket because I was testing out like a wind shell, and so those other items, like I didn't use them, but I still would bring them for safety. But I did use a wind shell, like a wind jacket, and that ended up being really a good piece for that scenario, because it's always blowing. Like I say, like the air is always circulating up there, but you are just trudging through the snow, so you're sweating, you're exerting a ton, and so that really helps like regulate temperature. Because if I even would have had like the Ventus on, I would have been overheating, and really I just needed something to keep it so that when the wind blew, it didn't just like cut straight to the skin. And so that piece actually ended up being a great piece to have that I don't always bring, or maybe haven't used a ton in the past. So that piece ended up being maybe one of my more preferred pieces. That might also just be because it's a newer piece in my system at the moment.
Yeah, I would second the wind jacket. I don't take down pants, or I didn't take any rain pants, but I like Tayson. I always bring a rain jacket. But we hiked in basically in a blizzard, and I was not wearing my rain jacket. I was wearing another wind jacket just over a lightweight fleece, and I mean, obviously sweating a ton. There's no getting around like the sweating, but I would say if I would have even attempted wearing a rain jacket instead of the wind jacket, that thing would have come off so fast because I would have overheated. So even though it was a blizzard, the wind jacket blocked enough of the precipitation from actually getting through, but I was sweating anyway, and having the breathability was like, I mean, the pace that we had was pretty much, it was what it was because of the snow conditions, but also because of our own self-governing, like knowing that we only had the water that we were carrying, and we knew the amount of effort that was taking, right? And so we were sweating a ton, and it was work. So just putting that all together, we really had to make ourselves make sure we were not walking too fast or trying too hard to just push through all that snow. Like I'd say we really quickly established our rotation of who was breaking trail, and a lot of that was to just control the pace and make sure we weren't overdoing it, because you could easily overdo it and burn yourself out. So wind jacket. The one thing I would have taken more of was liner gloves. I took a system.
You did have a sweet.
It was a great system. It was a really lightweight shell mitten, and then like a merino glove liner to go inside there, and my hands were warm the whole time. And then I took an extra pair of, like, I'd say mid-weight wind stopper soft shell gloves for camp. I would have taken one extra pair of liner gloves just because
they get wet.
You're working so hard, your hands are sweating, and so I think just having that extra ounce and a half of an extra pair of liner gloves.
Yeah, they don't get like wet, but they're gonna get damp. Like there's just no way to keep them from getting damp from exertion, and stuff. But Brigham did have a really cool system. I mean, some people have probably seen me in gear videos talk about like the little wind, basically a rain mitten is all it is. Like it's just a rain mitten. And I've really liked that, especially in summertime, blocking wind, keeping rain off, and then you add a liner underneath it, and it adds warmth. But Brigham basically had like the winter version of that, where the shell was more durable, a little bit heavier fabric,
had palm material, had palm grip, so it was. But
inside of it, there's nothing. There's no insulation. There's no material like a brushed fleece. There's nothing. Yep. And what's awesome about that is, just like you said, he could rotate a liner glove, and the inside would basically be able to be completely dry again. Whereas like the gloves I was using, they had they've got a membrane, and then they've got an inner, Primaloft or something kind of insulation in there. But once those get wet, you cannot dry them out. I mean, it's impossible. Even wearing the liner glove in there, like you can switch a liner glove and it'll pull some of the moisture out of the insulation. But regardless, what I've found is that it sure seems like you can't get them to dry back out, and then your hands are going to stay colder. And so I was quite envious of Brigham's setup. I think I'll switch to that next winter and give that a shot, just for the ability to get the inside of the gloves dry again. Because I'm also a very heavy sweater. I'm just like at the top end of sweating, and so like on that hike in, my hands are going to get a little bit of moist, like just a little bit of moisture no matter what. And I think that's always led to why my hands, my feet get cold, is there's just always going to get a little bit muggy or something in my boot or in my glove, and then that moisture is just going to stay there until you get back. I mean, I washed those gloves once at my house, hung them up to dry for a full day, like with the opening at the bottom so that the water could fall right out of the glove. Checked them 24 hours later, and they were still soaked on the inside. I decided to turn them completely inside out, leave them for another day before they would dry. So that tells you a little bit about just how careful you need to be to keep your hands dry, but also, like I said, I think Brigham had a system that I'm really interested in now, and that was the first time he tried it too. I think we both were like on trail going, "This is awesome."
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was for the perceived warmth, meaning like it's a lightweight glove liner with a over mitten that's just a shell. most people probably not think that's warm enough for how cold it was going to be, but my hands were not cold once, not once, and it just works really well. And yeah, we were definitely intrigued by that. It was cool.
All right, well, guys, for those of you listening out there, feel free to send us your comments, questions about backpacking, cool outdoor stories, or ideas for future episode topics. And you can do that by commenting on our Live Ultralight Podcast YouTube channel. Please subscribe, by the way. Or you can email us at liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send us positive iTunes reviews, and we will definitely read those on the show. And once again, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We did get one comment I thought was kind of humorous from one of our interviews we had last month. This is from Mark Hemming. Take it easy on us East Coasters. We like to pretend we have mountains.
Hey, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. Me and Brigham are coming east in like a month and a half.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Can we talk about where you're going?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Where are you going? I don't know where you're going.
We're gonna try to get out to AT Trail Days, and so if you're in the area,
Damascus, Virginia.
And you've always wanted to talk to Brigham, come find us.
Yeah.
You talk fabrics and
yeah. And then right after that, we're gonna jump on the AT, and we're actually gonna. The goal is to probably fast pack and try to cover 100 miles.
Oh, nice.
So we wanted to get out there. We want to understand more of what you guys deal with on trail. I think it's great for us as a design department to be able to empathize a bit more. Brigham spent more time, in that type of terrain than I have, so I'm excited to do that. But hopefully we'll understand a little bit more about the East Coast hiking and stuff. So we'll spend some time on the AT here soon.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you to those at home for joining us, and thank you, Tayson and Brigham, for coming back on the show.
All right, thanks for having us.